And we are live. All right, we are back. UFC Nashville main event. Taliesin Texeira, the newcomer, versus the knockout king of heavyweight, Derek Lewis. It's good to be back in a crowded event. Should be cool. It's me, Tony. Got my boy Mike, Alex, four-time MMA crew. We ready to put in some picks, and I just want to do better than my last time out. So fingers crossed with these fights. But I'm ready to get started whenever y'all are.
All right, let me get this fight. Get the apology on, and then I'll
You good?
kick it off. All right, I got it loaded in. Here we go. Y'all ready?
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Alrighty, starting off with, we got Fatima Klein versus Melissa Mullins. I'm gonna go with Melissa Mullins here. I do not like Fatima Klein as a favorite, as a huge favorite like this. Melissa Martinez is not a bad underdog pick here for in women's MMA standpoint. She's 8-1. I think I saw her last fight. If I'm not mistaken, it was a pretty good performance from her. And yeah, I got her by, signature women's MMA fashion. I got her by decision.
Women's MMA, it is hard to predict certain things, but I've seen Fatima Klein as one of the better women in women's MMA, somebody who's pretty physical, and she trains, I think she's the main sparring partner of Erin Blanchfield. She kind of picks up some of the grappling game from Erin Blanchfield. She seems like one of the few women that's actually disciplined and kind of does the right things at the right time rather than kind of flailing around. I've seen her on short notice. I think she debuted against Jazz Davicius, and she looked decent against, a bigger girl in Jasmine. And I want to say she got a TKO over Dudakova as well. And I want to say she won another fight. But everything I've seen from Fatima Klein, I honestly like for women's MMA. She's pretty big. She's got a grappling game. She uses teeps and kicks and her jab correctly on the feet. I think Melissa Martinez, she's okay, but in her debut, she fought Alice Ardelin and made it a split decision. Alice Ardelin has a terrible record. To be fair, she makes it close with all the fights that she has had in the UFC. But I think Fatima Klein's just bigger, stronger. I think Melissa Martinez is just one of those girls that's you can kind of see it in her. She's more soft. She's more girly than a Fatima Klein is, who's more manly and strong and tall. I'm going to pick Fatima Klein by a ground and pound TKO in the second. I think she gets her into the position she wants her to be in, and I think we see the grappling game take over, and I could even see a rare TKO in women's MMA. So I'm gonna put myself out on the line and go for second round TKO for Fatima Klein, ground and pound, elbows, similar to the way she did Dudakova.
First fight of the night. I'm gonna make it a clean sweep. Fatima Klein just hasn't had a size advantage in a UFC fight as much as she does in this one. Melissa Martinez, I think she's pretty much a striker first, decent record, but Fatima Klein's taller, got more UFC level experience. There's a clear grappling edge in this fight for her. She trains with Erin Blanchfield. I think she has the opportunity to present a finish in this fight just with the gap that she has on the ground. I think I'm going to go with a second round submission. I think Melissa Martinez is tough. I don't think she's going to give up on herself in terms of getting TKO'd, but I could see her giving up her back, and then Fatima just takes it and gets a rear naked choke out of it. So I'm going to go with either a rear naked choke or a bulldog choke. I'm going to go with one of those. Second round. But a choke nonetheless.
Word. Ready? Next fight, we got Mike Davis taking on Mitch Ramirez. I just called him a bitch. Shit. My bad. I'm gonna go with Mike Davis. I think he's gonna ground and pound TKO Mitch Ramirez. Mike Davis ain't really that bad of a fighter. It's just his mindset. Sometimes he does prefer to be a Twitch streamer over just being an overall fighter. He does have, but the thing with him is he does have the tools to be good. It's just his mindset. But from what interviews I've been seeing lately, he looks like he's finally got his mind in the right place. I think he's gonna beat Mitch Ramirez here. I don't. Mitch Ramirez ain't bad. It's just I don't see him as good of the names as Mike Davis has lost to. Mike Davis lost to a war against a prime Sadiq Yusuf. He lost to Gilbert Burns, who was a lightweight at the time and a former title challenger. And he lost to Faris Ziam, my bad. Faris Ziam is not that bad either. I think he's going to be a problem in the lightweight division and real soon. I don't see Mitch Ramirez being one of those names that beat Mike Davis. So I'm gonna go with Mike Davis, ground pound, TKO. Second round.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think Mike Davis will win this by TKO. Mitch Ramirez is ass, just straight up. He's not good. He made Moises look like Jose Aldo in his prime. He's just not good. He's somebody who's not good, and he shouldn't be in the UFC. But he filled in on short notice against Moises, and now he's here. He fought Pratis in the Contender Series, and he's still here. 0-2. But yeah, I think Mike Davis should have an easy fight here. He can beat him on the feet, beat him on the ground. He can really take this however which way he wants, and that kind of makes it hard to predict. Not that Mitch Ramirez is somebody you pick, but how Mike Davis wins. Mike Davis isn't really known for finishing, so you could go decision. But this is a fight where I do think a finish will happen for Mike Davis. He's made a point, too, in interviews. I think Mike has said he's going to go for a finish. I think that'll probably be a TKO on the feet. That's going to be my prediction. I think he warms up in the first and gets a TKO, like a question mark kick or something in the second, hurts him and finishes him, something cool. I could also see him going the submission route. I think Ramirez is ass, and this is... Mike Davis, he doesn't really take his career too seriously, but he is very good and he is well-rounded. And I think he could really take it whichever way he wanted, if he wants to. But I think it'll be a TKO on the second round. Pause. Yeah.
Second fight of the night, second straight clean sweep. I'm going to go Mike Davis with a knockout as well. As Mike and Alex have alluded to, Mike Davis in recent interviews has said that he's looking for the finish in this one. And I think there's a gap on the feet. As Alex said, Thiago Moises was looking pretty competent on the feet against him, and we rarely say that in a lot of Thiago Moises fights. He's a grappler by trade. Mike Davis, is pretty well-rounded. He can compete everywhere in the fight. His last fight, though, against Faris Ziam, I don't think he wants to go to the ground. Whether it's... he could offensively wrestle, but honestly, I think that's probably the only thing that Mitch Ramirez has in this matchup, maybe. Just the attempts of wrestling he would attempt to do. I think Mitch Ramirez should wrestle, because on the feet, I think there's a pretty sharp gap in technicality and speed, particularly. In those two areas, I think Mike Davis just throws cleaner, moves better. And if Thiago Moises is doing that to you, I can only imagine what Mike Davis is about to do. This is a guy who, if I'm not mistaken, won a striking competition at Tiger Muay Thai or something along those lines, and that's a pretty world-renowned Muay Thai camp. So I'm gonna go with I was making a sweep. I'm gonna go with them. Second round TKO. I think counters, step in knee, body kicks, head kicks. I could see it all from Mike Davis in this fight. I think this is going to be a real opportunity for him to display a skill set on the feet. So I'm going to go to second round TKO. If you're Ramirez, I think you got to wrestle out the gate. I don't think you should strike with this guy.
I don't even think Ramirez would do that, to be honest.
No.
Ramirez is...
Yeah.
Moving on, we got Kennedy Nzechukwu versus Walter Walker. I'm gonna go with Walter Walker. I think light heavyweight going into heavyweight is finally getting exposed. I know Kennedy looked good in his last fight, but his last fight was against Chris Barnett, right?
Bershke.
Yeah.
Oh, it was Bershke?
He KO'd Bershke, yeah.
Bershke's ass though. Yeah. I don't like these competitions. I think Walter is better than a Lucas Bershke and a Chris Barnett. And lately he's been looking like he's in better shape. So the more I see him, the more clean he looks. I'm gonna go with Walter Walker by submission. I think he's going to strangle Kennedy Nzechukwu. Kennedy is not a bad fighter. It's just, well, actually, no, he is a pretty bad fighter. But that Owen St. Preux fight is still not out of my head. How the fuck do you lose to a 45-year-old Owen St. Preux? That's just disgraceful. But enough of me yapping. I'm gonna go with Walter Walker by sub. I think he's going to make Kennedy quit here. Like how Kennedy normally does.
Yeah, this is a tough one.
Yeah.
I think both are this is for a ranked spot at heavyweight, more or less. I think it's tough because I've seen Kennedy quit on so many times, so many occasions. I do think he's the more well-rounded and more athletic fighter here. I think on the feet, I'd lean Kennedy. On the ground, I'd go Walker. Cardio, Kennedy. Durability, Walker. It's close. Neither of the guys have really... Kennedy's been in the UFC longer. He's older. He's taken more shots. Walker hasn't really fought anybody too good. And part of me still views Walker as a fat piece of shit, to be honest. Even though he lost the weight, he's gotten in better shape. Part of me looks at him like a fat piece of shit still. And I think if he does have a really dominant first round, that's going to result in him gassing out and losing the next two. I think he could get a TKO early with ground and pound or maybe a submission. Tough, but I think I'm going to slightly lean Kennedy here to outlast Walker early and win either a decision or a TKO late. I'm going to say you could use the knees to the body as well on a gassed out Walker. I'm going to say third round TKO for Kennedy. I think he'll be able to get knees to the body and land shots on a gassed out Walker after Walker has a dominant first round. I could see Walker just rugby tackling him pretty much and going at him right away and gassing himself out. And I think Kennedy's well-rounded enough and he's veteran enough to do well at heavyweight. So but it's tough because I've seen him bitch out so many times. But I'm going to go Kennedy winning the second and the third, maybe getting a TKO in the third.
I agree with Alex. This is a tough fight to call. I thought he broke down the differences in their strengths and weaknesses pretty candidly. I think on the feet, Kennedy is more athletic, longer, better technical. Speed advantage, you'd probably have to go Kennedy as well. Grappling and durability, I do favor Walker. The only concern I have with Walker is he's 27, and at heavyweight, that's very young at heavyweight, in my opinion. I do think the more experienced fighter is Kennedy as well. So he has the experience, he's the better athlete, and he's the better striker, and he's longer. I think his transition to heavyweight has been very good, but let's keep in mind who he's fighting. He's fighting Chris Barnett, and he fought Lucas Bursky. And I want to bring up Lucas Bursky in particular because I actually have a little theory about Lucas Bursky. Because for those who don't know, he is Walter Walker's only loss in the UFC. He lost to Lucas Bursky. I have a theory about that fight. I think, now I have no proof to back me up, but I felt that physically Lucas Bursky looked very different from that fight to the Kennedy Nzechukwu fight. I reckon he was on sauce. And he was able to defend the takedowns of Walter Walker, and he was able to just kind of move around and use his footwork and be the better fighter. Hold on, I'm getting a call. My bad. Sorry, I will edit this out. Hello? I have only $100 bill, so I have to break it later. I don't know. I'm doing my podcast right now. I'm doing a podcast right now. Probably when you come home with Mom. Okay? So don't text on your phone. Don't look. Where are you? Okay, don't text and drive. Be careful. Actually, I'm doing picks. I'm on the third fight right now, so I don't know how long it's gonna take. But we'll see. All right. All right. Don't text and drive. Be careful. Bye. Sorry about that. As I was saying, I have a theory about that fight. I thought Lucas Bursky looked very physically different between the Walter Walker fight and then Kennedy Nzechukwu fight. I think he was on the sauce. He looked better in the cardio. He looked better in movement. He just looked physically better in that fight compared to that fight. And in the Kennedy fight, it looked like he was off the sauce. He looked flabby. He looked slow. He looked lethargic compared to what he looked like against Walker. Now, again, I have no proof, so it's just, just a crazy Tony Trill conspiracy, but just a little personal thought I had regarding that particular common opponent. As for this fight, I think round one is probably Walter Walker's most optimal round to engage in the grappling. He's coming off back-to-back first-round heel hooks. I understand it was Junior Tafa and I forget the other guy he heel hooked. But yeah, he's coming off two back-to-back finishes in the first round. I do expect a little bit more adversity in this fight. I don't think the finish is going to be as easy to get. But I can't help but notice there are times in Kennedy's career where he just cracks under pressure. And the main fight in particular that I want to bring up is the Dow and Young fight. That finish, after watching Kennedy fight Olberg, I would never think he would lose a fight like that, the way he did in the Dow and Young fight. And call me crazy, I can envision a world where Walter Walker shoots a takedown, Kennedy stuffs it, but Walter pushes him up against the cage, and then he just drops a Taliesin Teixeira clinch elbow right into Kennedy's face, and he'll does what fighters do when they get hit in the face, and just stops doing what their defense essentially, and give me a second, but Walter's not gonna care about that, and he's just gonna keep on swinging and just no, the fight's still going on. And I could see a semi-questionable finish occurring. I'm going to go with a first-round TKO where Walter Walker gets some takedowns and Kennedy defends some takedowns, but ultimately it leads to a collision up against the cage where Walter Walker just fires off a mean clinch elbow, similar to Taliesin Teixeira did to Justin Tafa. And he just plows right into Kennedy's face, and Kennedy just does what all fighters do, give me a second, I just got hit in the face, but the fight's still going on, and Walker's just still spamming hooks, and the fight's over. It'll be questionable, but nonetheless, I think Walter Walker would have gotten a first round KO in that fashion. So I'm going to go with the upset with Walter Walker. My only concern is he's super young for heavyweight, but I'm still picking him, and I have another pick with that type of condition as well later on in the card. We'll get to that, though.
Word. Ready. Moving on. We got Lauren Murphy taking on Eduarda Mora. I think Eduarda Mora is going to fuck up Lauren Murphy. I don't really have anything else to say. I'm going to go with either a decision or ground and pound TKO. That's all I got. I don't think you don't really need to break down this fight as much, besides just saying Lauren Murphy's going to get fucked up. She's coming off a 2-year layoff, and she gets worse and worse the more you watch her fight. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah, Eduarda Mora should win. She's the bigger girl, the more athletic, the younger girl. Lauren Murphy's been inactive. Last time we saw her, she got the fucking shit beat out of her by Jessica Andrade. She set a significant strike record damn near on her. She might have even. But Lauren Murphy's just old, inactive, and shit. Unathletic. She's only going to be worse now. She definitely didn't get better in this time. She got older, less coordinated, and, more rusty. So I think you go Eduarda Mora here. It's just a matter of how. Lauren Murphy's tough. I think she will retain her toughness. But if Eduarda Mora is in mount, just raining down, the ref is going to call it. But I'm going to say Lauren Murphy still has enough grappling knowledge and durability to make it to the horn. And we get a 30-26 decision or something like that in probably retires on the mic after. I think she's still tough enough to get a decision, and she's still okay enough by women's standards to survive the grappling, at least. So I'm going to say Eduardo Mora, dominant decision, ground and pound, mostly grappling. Yeah, Mora wins. Easy.
Yeah, I think we're all in firm agreement here. I don't like the layoff for Lauren Murphy. Her last time out, she lost to Andrade. Eduardo Mora, I like this move to 125 because I want to say a couple of her first fights in the UFC were at 115, and I did see a good performance out of her against Montserrat Ruiz, but you know, like you had to figure like against that level of competition, anybody could look good. But I like this move to 125. Hopefully, it boosts her gas tank because that was my main concern watching her fight. She's so active in that first round that she usually fatigues right after. So we'll see how adding weight and less of a cut is going to affect her. But yeah, initially I won't lie, I was thinking finish, but I'm actually going to agree with what Alex said as far as Lauren Murphy's just overall experience, her durability, and her grappling knowledge to not make that mistake. I was thinking finish, but I'm going to go with Eduardo Mora decision where she clearly wins the first round. It gets closer, but she holds on for the second round, and then the third round I could even potentially see a Lauren Murphy maybe having more total strikes in the round. But overall, I think the layoff, the youth advantage for Mora, and just how aggressive she is early, she would have done enough early to like hold on late to secure a decision win. So I'm gonna go with the Eduardo Mora decision win.
Alrighty. Moving on, we got Jake Matthews taking on Chitty Chitty Bang Bang Njokuani. I'm going to go with Chitty Njokuani. This is a risky pick because Chitty looked shit in his last fight with his boxing and stuff, and I'm also on a losing streak every time when I pick against Jake Matthews. That's just something to look on. Not really if you don't really look at shit like that, but who cares? Jake, I don't know. Jake Matthews just looks chinny to me. I know he is tough and stuff like that, but there's some shots that I've seen him get wobbled by and seen him eat that are like vicious. And I think Chitty is bigger. I think he's the bigger fighter. And I think he hits harder. I think he's just overall more complete. And I think, I don't know, just something's telling me that he is going to finish Jake Matthews in this fight. I'm going to go with a second round. I'll go second round KO. Maybe first. I think Chitty's going to look shit in this fight too, but I think he's going to get the KO.
Yeah, it's a tough fight. It's definitely one of the harder fights to predict on this card, in my opinion. I'm going to have to go with Jake Matthews, though. I've been thinking about it all day. Chitty's tough, but the problem with Chitty is he fades, and he can be taken down and out-grappled, something that Jake Matthews is able to do. He's been able to... His grappling game has been getting better the last couple years. I definitely see him as the stronger guy as well in this fight with a better grappling. I think in close, the boxing goes to Jake Matthews as well. I think the problem when you get in close with a guy like Chitty is the clinch, elbows, knees, that type of shit, and closing the distance as well. You got to make sure you don't get teeped in the face and other shit like that. Chitty can do that, and I'm going to think Chitty probably tees off on Jake Matthews early in round one. But I think the thing that differs a Semmelsberger from a Chitty Njokuani is not only the gas tank, but the output. When Chitty hurts somebody, he goes for him. Look, think about that RoboCop fight. He split open RoboCop and just went for him, and then come around the second round, RoboCop's back, and the tide's turned. I don't think Jake Matthews is as effective or as powerful as RoboCop is, but I think he might have better IQ. He might have better head movement. I think he has a better chin. I don't think Jake Matthews has ever been TKO'd in the UFC. Not that I can think of. He's pretty durable. I don't think Chitty can knock him out. I think he can drop him for sure, but I don't think he's going to have the output to bring it into the second and the third round, which I think you need those rounds in order to finish a Jake Matthews. You need a second and a third round to really work him. And I think Jake Matthews is tough. I think he's durable. I think he has his moments of being shit, and I don't think Jake Matthews is anything super good. But I think after a tough first round, he can rally to win the second and third over a gassed out Chitty who, after hurting Jake Matthews early, would have put too much out there, which is something I think a Semmelsberger didn't do. He kind of sat down on his shots, and when he'd hurt Jake Matthews, he'd kind of recompose. Even though Semmelsberger's ass, and I think Chitty's better, Chitty puts out too much. He kind of goes crazy in that first round after he hurts somebody. And I'm going to go Jake Matthews to mix in the grappling, hurt him in the boxing realm, and win a decision, or maybe even a late TKO or submission. But I'm going to say decision, 29-28, Jake Matthews.
This is one of the tougher fights to call, hence the betting line being pick'em. Initially, when this fight got announced, I was leaning Chitty because I had picked Chitty as an underdog in his last fight versus Zaleski dos Santos, and he won, and he did get a KO like I predicted he would, but I think he was just faster, better footwork than Zaleski. Zaleski, I think it was a clinch exchange. It was either a knee or a clinch exchange that led to the knockout. Chitty is dangerous. He is the longer fighter. He's a former middleweight, so I do think that power does carry down to 170, even though he is making a tougher cut. He has had a weakness for grappling in his career, at least in the UFC level. And I know Jake Matthews isn't a predominant wrestler, but I do agree with Alex's sentiment that his grappling has improved over the years, and his jiu-jitsu and wrestling overall is not bad. I do think Jake Matthews, his durability is put in question at times, but I looked it up on Tapology. He's only been KO'd one time in his career, and that was prime Kevin Lee via ground and pound. And I think the reach advantage did have something to incorporate with that. It could have just I didn't watch the fight, so I'm just gonna assume that the reach advantage of Kevin Lee maybe could have affected him on the feet. If not, he just took him down and ground and pounded him. But that's a pass fight. That's for another time. Going back to this matchup, I think Chitty's dangerous early round one, and I was gonna pick him. But the longer I thought about this fight, I'm actually going to go with Jake Matthews here. I really rate that performance he had against Michael Morales, someone that I'm very high upon. I think he's a potential future champion in the making. I know a lot of people don't seem to agree with me on that, but I like Michael Morales, and I thought Jake Matthews had a pretty good fight with him. I think the boxing technicality favors Jake Matthews. I think the grappling overall, whether it's wrestling or jiu-jitsu, favors Jake Matthews. I think Jake Matthews has the better gas tank. He's only been knocked out one time. Chitty, I do think is dangerous early, but I agree with what Alex said. I think he fades. And I think there's just more options in this fight for Jake Matthews if he's able to mitigate the range of Nijhakwani. If he could take away the straight punches, if he could take away the teeps. And I do rate his footwork. I think he does have the boxing, the footwork, the wrestling that you need to kind of mix it up and always keep Chitty guessing. And I do think Chitty's going to fade after a potentially good first round. I'm going to go with the Jake Matthews decision win, where he just incorporates the martial arts together and displays for 15 minutes that I'm I'll win 2/3 of the fight and prove I'm the better fighter everywhere. Whether it's at boxing range, getting takedowns, control time, submission attempts, whatever the case may be, I think he's going to display his experience and overall well-roundedness in this fight. I'm going to go with the Jake Matthews decision win.
Word. All right. Moving on. We got Chris Curtis moving down to 170. Take on Max Griffin. I think Chris Curtis is going to beat the living shit out of Max Griffin here. I think Max Griffin is shit. I don't think he'll ever be shit. If I'm not mistaken, he made Colby Covington at one point look like prime fucking Canelo against him. So let that sink in. If Colby was able to box you up and stuff, I think Chris Curtis is gonna look like Floyd Mayweather against him. I think all glaze aside and all that, I am going to go with Chris Curtis knocking Max Griffin out in the second.
My bad. I was finishing chewing beef jerky.
You're good.
But yeah. I also have to agree with Mike. Chris Curtis moving down to welterweight. I think he's going to win. You know, sometimes people moving down a weight class it isn't so good, especially middleweights moving down to welterweight. I think this is one of the scenarios where it does. I think Chris Curtis is better than Max Griffin. He's younger. He's more in his prime than Max Griffin is. Max Griffin, I think, is like 40 or 41. Chris Curtis, I think, is 37. They're both old, but I like Chris Curtis's boxing a lot more than I like Max Griffin's. I don't see anything Max Griffin could do that's going to sway the tide of this fight or anything like that. He doesn't have like some grappling game that's like an X factor or like a kicking game that's going to chop off his leg. I think Chris Curtis is just better. You know, even if he does go to welterweight and it does affect him, I could see less effective Chris Curtis even beating Max Griffin. And I think, you know, even if the welterweight weight cut isn't even perfect or if it doesn't look great, I think he could still win. I'm going to go Chris Curtis by decision. I think it'll be a fight between two unks. I could see him chinning Max Griffin, but Max Griffin's another guy. I don't really remember him getting chinned very often. I don't remember the last time he got KO'd. He's been subbed a couple times. I think Colby ground and pound TKO'd him. He's not really somebody who's getting slept unconscious like that. I don't know if Chris Curtis will be the first guy to do it in a while, although he very well could be as well. But I'm going to bet on the welterweight move, taking a little bit of speed, a little bit of timing, a little bit of power out of Chris Curtis, and it's going to be a 29-28, 30-27, maybe Max Griffin. Nah, it'll be a 30-27. Chris Curtis decision.
This is a good fight. Chris Curtis back at 170. You know, for whatever it's worth, at PFL, he was 1-3 at 170. He turns 38 this week. So just some out of the X's and O's, just some things I took note going into this matchup. He doesn't have the best record at 170, and he is turning 38, but I'm still going with Chris Curtis. I'm still going with the action man here. I think he's got good boxing. I think he's got good takedown defense. I think good cardio. His output's not terrible. I think Chris Curtis is pretty solid fighter overall, and I just don't think Max Griffin's got the power or the output to make me draw fear of Chris Curtis potentially getting dropped or hurt or potentially KO'd. His last fight was to some a controversial finish over from the Roman Kopylov fight. It was a head kick, and it was like, you know, kind of a hard thing to call to like stop the fight at that point. He may have been even up in that fight, but I just think Chris Curtis is the better fighter in this matchup. I don't really see anything Max Griffin could do. He didn't look terribly good in the Chiesa fight. I think a knockout could happen, and why not? I'll go for it. I'm going to go to Chris Curtis, third round TKO, where the first two rounds he's just looking like the clinically better boxer, and eventually by the third round Max Griffin will just be a no mas, and I can't be here anymore, and Chris Curtis will tee off against him. He will tee off against Max Griffin up against the cage and body shots. I'm going with a body shot TKO for Chris Curtis. I like that. Third round TKO where he just clearly won the first two rounds, and then the third round it's like, why are you here, Max Griffin? Just go home, and then the fight's over. Body shot TKO, third round.
I agree. He's going to turn Max Griffin into Chris Griffin. Moving on, we got the main card opener. Justin Tafa, another guy going down to a lower weight class against Tukos Tacos. I'm gonna go with Justin Tafa here. I think he's gonna knock Tukos Tacos the fuck out. Out of all the people that Tafa's lost to, it was Walter Walker, who I don't think that's that bad of a loss. Marcos Rogerio de Lima, who was ranked at one point, not a bad loss, and I think it was also on short notice. And Mo Usman at the time was on a huge win streak, and I think he was undefeated at the time. So I don't rate those losses badly, and I think he was doing good against Mo in that fight too. I think he's going to knock out Tukos Tacos in the first or the second round. Tuco Tacos is dog shit. Don't think he'll be anything. He's nothing more than just a fat light heavyweight. Other than that, nothing else to say. I got first or second round KO by Tafa.
Yeah, you got Tuco's was just a fat retard and doesn't really have any skill or any ability to do anything other than like a serve a sandwich at like a restaurant. Like, and I think that's honestly should be his career. Like
Even I don't think he can do well.
Yeah, Tuco Tokos is not. I don't like him. I saw him once. Like he was fighting some can on the regional circuit, and he like took him down, and the can like put his arm down and broke his arm like on the takedown, and fucking Tuco Tokos just started emoting on him like he fucking hit like the fucking Buckley head kick. It was like the cringiest thing ever. Like Brendan Allen and all his homies stormed the cage and were like, yeah, yeah. It's like, it was honestly one of the corniest things I've ever seen. And it made me hate Tuco Tokos and Brendan Allen ever since then. So I'm rooting heavy for Junior Taffa to break this fucker's jaw and like just send his eyes into the back of his head. And hopefully he breaks his arm on the way down. But yeah, I do not like Tuco Tokos. That moment really pissed me off. It's kind of awkwardly funny as it was. He just started like hitting Fortnite emotes like as soon as the dude accidentally broke his arm. Like dead ass looking up, that's what he did. He just started going. He just started emoting. like, bro, that was an accident.
Yeah. I didn't know that.
Yeah, Brody had that moment that Jose Aldo had when he had that win in Rio.
It was like pretty much like it was like the Estela Nunez arm break. Like the dude just like got a double leg and he like stuck his arms out and they broke.
Damn, even Judakova didn't fucking emo when she did that shit.
And like he like overdid it. He didn't even like people thought Weidman like celebrated when Silva broke his leg. Like this was like, if you didn't see what happened, you would have thought he got like a head kick KO or a wheel kick KO or something like brutal. Like that was like you'll have to, like, I don't watch the break. I don't recommend it. It's nasty. But if you do, Tuco Tokos like does like just some crazy like emotes like he fucking did something. Yeah, I hate Tuco Tokos. I think Junior Taffa's like sharp enough and powerful enough in round one to get him out of there. Tuco Tokos will be hittable. You know, Tuco Tokos is probably the better grappler in this fight, and he could make it scrappy and gritty. I just don't think he's good enough to really even win a decision like that. I think Taffa could still land the bigger shots and hurt him. And I think it'll just be a one and done first round KO by Taffa. I think the light heavyweight move was a good idea. And I think his power is going to, I think he's still going to have power. So I'm going to go Junior Taffa first round KO.
Tough fight. I'm not really too high on the Taffa brothers, but I like this move down to 205 for Junior. He wasn't, particularly big at heavyweight, to be honest. He was kind of getting dwarfed at heavyweight a little bit. Now in this new weight class, there's not really too many grapplers at 205 for the most part, so I like it. He's, on paper, I would think the more credentialed striker, having the knockout power as well as a former Glory kickboxing career. I'll admit I was leaning Tuco Tacos, and even on another podcast, I think I even picked Tuco's Tacos. But after some more thought and thinking about the matchup, I actually at the time when making that prediction on the other podcast thought this was a heavyweight bout, but this is actually a light heavyweight bout. I didn't take that into account. Tuco Tacos 6'4", 76-inch reach. I think Taffa's like 6'2", 72-inch reach. I don't like his reach. But Tuco Tacos isn't really particularly dangerous. I could see Taffa closing the distance and not being scared of getting countered. The real problem I've seen with Taffa as far as striking is the leg kick defense. That's kind of crazy considering he came from Glory Kickboxing. Hopefully he would have patched that part of his game, particularly his leg kick defense, as exposed in the Rogerio de Lima fight. But granted, it was short notice and de Lima's got good leg kicks. Tuco Tacos isn't really particularly dangerous anywhere. I just think he's the bigger guy. He's got the better grappling on paper, and both these guys lose to fairly high-level guys. Tafa lost to Rogerio de Lima. He lost to Walter Rocker. Tuco Tokos lost to Umar Sai, Ming Yang Zhang, and another light heavyweight. What's it called? The prospect, Navajo Sterling. I'm gonna go with a Junior Tafa decision. I think he's gonna land the bigger shots, and Tuco Tokos is kind of gonna do what he did in the Sterling Navajo fight. I think he's just gonna back up and not want to get finished and be content with losing a decision. So, I think he will attempt to mix in grappling. He will attempt to put Tafa on the fence, try to get some control time, but I still think Tafa would have kept up enough in the strike count and would have landed the bigger shots where the judges recognized his damage, his control of the ring, his pressure going forward is valued highly more than Tuco Tokos' clinch, takedown attempts, and control time and total strikes. So I'm going to go with a Junior Tafa decision win and a successful debut at 205.
Word.
Yeah.
Moving on. We got Vitor Petrino taking on Austin Lane. Another person that is, well, moving a weight class. This one's just moving up. I'm gonna go with Vitor Petrino. I think he's gonna knock Austin Lane the fuck out. I'm gonna go with first or the second. Austin Lane looked very good in his last fight, though. I will say that, and all it takes is for Vitor to make a stupid decision. I like Vitor Petrino. Tony and I were high on him at one point. Mainly Tony, but I thought Vitor would have been something at light heavyweight at some point. Funny thing is, I met both of them on the same day. So this is an interesting one. Honestly, it just goes by how Vitor looks. If Vitor looks like he's making stupid mistakes, Austin Lane could get another fraud check win. But I think Vitor is going to come in poised and smart for this fight. I think he's gonna look better at light heavyweight as well. I'm gonna go with second or first round KO, Vitor Petrino.
Yeah, I also have to go with Vitor Petrino. Austin Lane is just one of those guys, bottom feeder, heavyweight. I think somebody who's like a fringe ranked light heavyweight can go up and beat those guys, most of the time. And we see maybe not when it comes to ranked guys, but when it comes to Austin Lane's, you should be able to beat him. And I think, the Pinto fight with Austin Lane that Mike alluded to does worry me. Austin Lane did look good in that fight, but I think a big part of it was Pinto looking shit and having UFC jitters. I don't think Petrino will have the jitters at this point, even though he is making a debut in another way, this time at heavyweight rather than the UFC. I think he's just better. I think he's got the jiu-jitsu game. He's probably got better boxing. I think Austin Lane just isn't very good. He's just kind of physical. He's tall. He's long. And I think Petrino's way to win here really is the grappling. I think that's, because there is danger on the feet with Austin Lane. Let's be real. I think if he were to take him down, I think I could see him getting a submission. I don't know about a KO on the feet just because I think he needs to be careful. But I think regardless, Petrino did look good on the feet before Jacoby KO'd him. So, do you think Petrino's good? I'm going to say second round arm triangle. I could see him hurting him on the feet or taking him down and then getting like a club and sub or an arm triangle after taking him down. So that's going to be my prediction. I think Petrino's just better in almost every way. Austin Lane's just big.
Vitor Petrino's heavyweight debut. As Mike said, I am still pretty high on Vitor Petrino. I became a fan of him in his Contender Series fight against Adolfo Bellato, where he was able to secure a knockout win. I've always thought he had potential and promise, but I think his biggest downfall was just his fight IQ. I think in the Anthony Smith fight, he was winning on the feet, in my opinion, and then he decided to shoot a takedown and kind of enter the only realm of the fight where I felt Anthony Smith had a fighting chance to potentially secure a victory, with it being a submission. He tapped to a guillotine, I want to say it was. That's not the best look, but that was a mistake nonetheless. And then in his fight against Dustin Jacoby, it was pretty competitive. It could have been 1-1. And in round 3, I thought he was looking pretty good, but then he got sniped by Jacoby with a clean knockout right on the shin. And that's against a pretty decent kickboxer, former Glory kickboxer in Jacoby. And in that fight, I felt like Petrino didn't grapple enough. So in the Anthony Smith fight, where he was winning on the feet, he made a bad decision to go to the ground and he got subbed. And in the Jacoby fight, I thought he didn't grapple enough and ended up getting KO'd in a close fight. These are questionable decisions that he's made in his career, and that was my area of concern with his fight IQ. And now at heavyweight, going against Austin Lane, who is the taller, longer fighter and the more just established heavyweight. This is Petrino's first fight at heavyweight, so he hasn't really felt the power or the speed of heavyweight yet. I do think with him adding weight, he will retain his speed, may even increase his power. I do think he's the better mixed martial artist in this fight. I think he's the more technical striker. I think he can grapple. Austin Lane, a former NFL linebacker, he's an athlete, He's not a small guy. He's got good reach. He's physical. He exposed Robles to Spain, but I felt like Robles to Spain in an MMA setting just wasn't at his full potential. There was a fear for the takedown. He's not the best boxer. He wants to be a kicking range and kind of dart in and out with his footwork, and not even dart in and out, just have enough range to set up his shot, his one big shot that he needs. Petrino isn't that type of fighter. He has power, but he's not like a one-punch knockout guy. He likes to set it up. He likes to look for counters, things along those lines. I think the kicking game could be big here for Petrino. I think he could really win any of the 3 ways. I think he can win a decision where he just displayed he's the more well-rounded fighter. I think he can win a knockout by countering Austin Lane's straight punches into a check hook. And I think he could potentially rock Austin Lane and choke him into a club and sub. But Austin Lane's main weakness for me has been his chin, so I'm just going to go with a knockout. I'll go with I'm torn between first and second round. I'll go first round, I think he's going to keep his speed. I think he's going to leg kick Austin Lane, try to bother him a little bit, try to bother his footwork, make him not stand so tall. And then I think he's going to slip a straight punch, maybe a jab or 2. And then I think he's going to land either a rear hook or a rear overhand, and it's just going to drop Austin Lane, and then he's going to follow up with some ground and pound TKO shots. So I'm going to call for a first round counter KO for Vitor Petrino in his heavyweight debut. I think he slips a straight punch, and it's either an overhand or a rear hook. After a couple leg kicks.
Word. Mike, you there?
Yeah, he's there.
I just finished. I just got back from the bathroom. My bad.
You're good.
All right, we'll edit that out. Moving on, we got Nate the Train Landwehr taking on Morgan Charrier.
I'll go last.
People picking Morgan Charrier is a good pick. But I'm not going to pick Morgan Charrier. I'm going to go with Nate the Train. I think Nate the Train's going to beat the living hell out of Morgan Charrier in the second and third. And I think he's going to win either a split decision or a unanimous decision. If Morgan Charrier does not knock out Nate the Train, it's going to be a long night. There is no way in fuck that Nate the Train is going to lose in Tennessee. Tennessee is where Nate the Train is originated from. So I don't know. Something's just telling me that he is going to dominate Morgan Charrier. I've seen Morgan Charrier get taken down by little guys too. I know the guy who he lost to was good in in Nathaniel Wood, but I think another Nathaniel is going to beat the shit out of him. And yeah. And Shepe was getting takedowns on him too. I don't know. Morgan Charrier ain't a bad fighter, but I think he's gonna get exposed in this fight. I think he's gonna get tired from trying to knock out Nate, and then Nate's gonna use the volume and output and smother him. It's gonna look like a Colby Covington type of fight, I feel like, where he just uses his gas tank, his veteran skills, and people forget, man, this dude was a legend, bro, in his other promotion. He was beating the shit out of Dagestanis. He was the champion. Dude was good. I know Nate hasn't been looking the greatest lately, but he's only losing to decent names. Like I'm about to look it up. I know he lost to Dan Ige. That's not a bad loss.
Right.
I know he lost to Duo Choi, who looked fucking phenomenal in that fight. I mean, the only loss is Julian Arosa. That's the one that makes me like, and the Herbert Burns one. Okay, those weren't good. Those weren't good losses, but the other two weren't bad either. And I think Morgan Charrier is. I think he's gonna lose, and there's no way that Nate the Train's gonna go out like a bitch in his hometown.
This is a tough one. Yeah. Morgan Charrier versus Nate Landwehr. On paper, in my opinion, Morgan Charrier should win. That being unsaid, they can't read paper in Tennessee. So
yeah, fuck yeah.
So I think Mike hit the nail on the hammer with the head, or whatever the Tennessee people like to say. Probably Texas, Tennessee. Hit the nail on the head with the hammer, or some shit like that.
Hit the nail in the coffin.
Yeah, just some hick speak. But
amen, brother.
Amen, brother. But I lost my train of thought. But yeah, on paper, I think Morgan Charrier should beat Nate Landwehr. Nate Landwehr can't read. Nate Landwehr in Tennessee, I think, is going to be a different animal. I think, he's going to come forward. I think it's going to significantly matter that he gets hit less since he's in Tennessee. I think he's going to want this really bad, and he's going to want to, there's going to be more motivation than ever. And the French quit. Let's be real. The French quit. And Morgan, in his last fight, it kind of seemed like at some point he just kind of resigned that he was losing. And I think, in the Shepe fight, you saw that somebody mixing in the grappling with the striking, kind of just having a pressure-heavy game plan can beat Morgan. I think Nate could do a similar thing. I do see Morgan just landing big shots on Nate, because Nate is open. But Nate just does shit sometimes, and it works. And I think Nate's going to somehow pull it off. I think it's going to be a TKO, a submission, or a decision. I'm going to say a decision. I think Morgan starts good, but ends not so good. I think Nate the Train starts getting the Tennessee crowd on his side, and he starts doing the Canelo versus Billy Saunders, where he starts waving the crowd on and body shotting him. It could be a phenomenal moment, and that's what I'm hoping for. So I'm going to go Nate Landwehr, 29-28, great fight of the night. Here's hoping.
Agreed.
Before I give this prediction, we're in Tennessee, so it's on the road. We get a little lit. I like whiskey. I got cognac, a little Hennessy. It's 12 o'clock somewhere. Anyways, back to this. The people's fight, the hometown hero, Nate Landwehr is in the building in Tennessee. It's a good fight, man. Both these guys had a pretty decent career in their respective promotions before the UFC. Morgan Charrier wasn't terrible in Cage Warriors. And as Mike alluded to, Nate Landwehr had a pretty good career at M1. And both those promotions I rate pretty highly outside of the UFC, to be honest. Morgan Charrier, I think Alex hit it on the nail. On paper, his style lines up pretty well with Nate Landwehr's style from a technical aspect in terms of Nate Landwehr at times could be a little too linear, a little too hittable. He's going to move forward. Morgan Charrier is pretty sharp with his movements. He's probably the more dynamic, athletic fighter striking-wise. But Nate Landwehr is athletic in a different type of way. In terms of his conditioning and his durability, I think it's pretty good considering his age and considering the amount of damage he sustained in a lot of his fights by his style. By him moving forward, he's going to advance pressure and he's going to land strikes and he's going to mix in takedowns, but in the process of that, he is getting hit at times. And I think Alex said something pretty important in this fight. This fight being in Tennessee, it's going to matter that Nate Landwehr, let's say like it's close and like the strike count because of maybe Nate Landwehr is just like landing guards, jabs at Morgan Charrier's guard, and it don't look like it's really doing any damage. If his strike count's slightly ahead and there's no real no bruising, no scratches on his face, the crowd's going to be roaring for him. So like in those tight decision scenarios, I feel like him being at home does play a part. And for what it's worth, I think Nate Landwehr's got the better record between the two of these guys. Morgan Charrier, I want to say, has near, if not 10 losses in his career. Nate Landwehr, he's only losing to like a certain caliber of fighter for the most part. The Dan Ige loss, I mean, I do think Morgan Charrier has dynamic tools with like knees and elbows and good straights and good footwork. But I feel like Alex said another thing I agree with. I have a prime example of this. The French do kind of quit. Umar Sy had a gift-wrapped potential robbery decision in his favor in the Alonzo Menefiel fight, and I saw that dude kind of quit in round 3. And that's an undefeated French prospect who was on the verge of getting a ranking. This is a guy who's lost multiple fights, and even though he is talented and he is a good striker, I feel like he could kind of fold a little bit. Nate Landwehr is going to live and die on his shield. That's a guy who is not going to quit. If he lost, it's because he probably got killed, for the most part. He doesn't quit. His gas tank, his pressure, his forward movement, I think he's got, in a way, more versatility in this fight with the grappling. That's something I do need to stress. I really do want Nate Landwehr to mix in wrestling. I think he could do some work up against the cage, and if he gets on top of Charrier, I think he can do some ground and pound too. I picked against Nate Landwehr in his last fight against Doo Ho Choi. I did not know Doo Ho Choi was going to out-grapple Nate Landwehr like that. I expected Nate Landwehr to have the advantage in that matchup against the Korean Superboy, but he didn't. I want to say I'm going to give him the advantage in this matchup. I think he's the better overall grappler than Morgan Charrier, and I really want Nate Landwehr to mix in his volume, weaponize his cardio as he does, and get Morgan Charrier on his back, because I think he could do some real work on the ground. But enough of my yapping. I'm going with the dog in Tennessee. I'm going with Nate the Train. I just think he's got the grit, the pressure, the cardio, the durability he's going to need. I think he's going to mix in some footwork. I think his defense is going to look better in this fight. I think he's going to avoid that big moment of getting cracked that's happened in a couple of his past fights. I think he's going to be more cautious, but he's going to weaponize the cardio in different ways in this fight. I think he's going to do some cage fighting. I think he's going to fight for takedowns. I think he's going to really make Morgan Charrier work this physical type of war that he wants to have. And I just don't think Charrier's got the gas tank to keep it going. I think he'll look good round 1, but I think he will fade in rounds 2 and 3. And I want to say Nathaniel Wood dropped Morgan Charrier. Nathaniel Wood, I do think, is a better technical striker than Nate Landwehr, but I can't help but notice he's a smaller fighter than Nate Landwehr. Nate Landwehr is not as good as a striker as Wood, but I do think he's going to take more chances than Wood would. So I'm going to go with the Nate Landwehr tough decision win, where the crowd was definitely a part of it, and he's just going to be the guy that keeps going forward and the guy that keeps trying to mix in grappling exchanges, total strikes, everything. I'm going with Nate Landwehr in an upset.
Agreed. He's going to turn that French baguette into a French faggot. Moving on, we got the feature fight. Calvin Kattar taking on Steen Mean Machine Garcia. I like both. Me and Tony met Calvin Kattar in Miami. Steve Garcia follows me on Instagram, but all biasness aside, there's going to be no glazing in this prediction that I'm doing. I'm gonna go with Steve Garcia though. I think he's going to use his what's the word? I think he's just gonna be the younger fighter in this fight. And lately, the younger fighter has been able to beat the old gatekeepers. Not calling Kattar a gatekeeper per se, but he hasn't really been the same since he injured himself against Arnold Allen. I think Garcia's going to mix in leg kicks. Garcia's in a very good gym. I think that gym is better than that fucking cartel, New England cartel. I don't think they're that good of a gym. I don't know. Something's just telling me that Calvin Kattar is going to get fucked up, and I think this is going to end in a Max Holloway versus Gaethje situation. I feel like the third round is going to be I think the first two is going to be where Garcia's combinizing on Kattar. Kattar's trying to land stuff, but he's just getting pieced up there. And then in the third round, it's going to end in a brutal knockout. I'm going to go with Steve Garcia, third round KO.
All right. Give me 1 second. Gotta throw in some zins for this next one. Tony here? Tony.
Tony's AFK. I wasn't really paying attention. I was just looking at my laptop while I was in the prediction.
I'm here. Do you want me to go?
Yeah.
I can go. I'll go second. We can keep the order. We were talking earlier about underdogs. I got Calvin Kattar by decision. I think Calvin Kattar beats Steve Garcia. I think Calvin Kattar is fighting for his job. And, New England Cartel is ass. But that doesn't apply to Kattar and Rob Font. Okay? They're okay. They're not great. They're okay. I think Steve Garcia is good. I think he's a brawler. But I think he meets his match when he faces strikers. And, if we look through the last couple of his careers, sure, he's fought some strikers. But a lot of these guys are cans that he's fighting. Like, your Sung Woo Choi's. Hunter Nelson's okay, but he's not really a striker. He's kind of a jack of all trades. I think when it comes to a guy like Calvin Kattar, who's going to have a sharp jab, he's going to keep range, he's going to be bouncing around, jabbing, right hand, even though he's not anything crazy. He's not a Max Holloway. He's going to have crazy output, or he's going to be throwing, crazy kicks or anything like that. But he's disciplined. He's not going to be throwing these winging shots. And, Steve Garcia is good. Steve Garcia is a brawler. He hits hard. He goes forward, and he breaks people. Calvin Kattar doesn't break. And, he loses. Sure, he loses. He gets his ass kicked sometimes, but he doesn't break. He keeps trying to fight, even against Max Holloway. He's either has to be, choked out, KO'd, held down, or his knee needs to explode from what we need to see. And I don't think Steve Garcia is just going to walk in here and KO him. I think Steve Garcia is hittable, and I think Steve Garcia likes his fights 3 minutes long. Calvin Kattar likes his fights, 10 minutes plus. So I think that favors Kattar. I don't think Cater's going to go to sleep here. I think this is going to be a 3-round fight, no matter how you slice it. And I like Cater's jab. I like Cater's footwork. I think Kattar is less hittable, actually, than Steve Garcia, which says a lot, because Cater's hittable. I think Kattar is more technical. I think Steve Garcia's power is big, and I think that's his X factor, but I think that matters less with the Kattar. I think Kattar can eat it. And I think Kattar can see a lot of the shots coming, too. I don't think Steve Garcia is going to come in here with some boxing style that Calvin Kattar's never seen before when he's fought Max Holloway and, a lot of other people. He's a very boxing-heavy fighter. These are two boxers in MMA. And if you look at two shadows of the guys fighting, you would say Calvin Kattar is the better boxer just by their silhouette. And I think that matters in a 4-ounce boxing glove fight. He is the cardio. He is the durability. I've seen Steve Garcia slumped by a Chinese bum, Mahashate. Calvin Kattar can do that exact same thing that Mahashate did. Like, he could do that exact same pullback right hand. Calvin Kattar's old. He's on a bad losing streak. I think he's fighting for his job. I think that Yusuf Zalal fight didn't sit well with him. He couldn't track down Yusuf Zalal. This is different. You're not going to have to try to find Steve Garcia. Steve Garcia is going to come forwards to you. Calvin Kattar is going to be the elusive one here, and I think that's going to pay benefits. I'm going to say Calvin Kattar. I'm going to say 29-28, Calvin Kattar, last 2 rounds. That's been a theme of a lot of my predictions today. I could see Garcia landing the bigger shots in round 1 and stealing it. I think it's going to be apparent right away that Steve Garcia is dealing with somebody at a higher echelon that he's been used to. Somebody who can take a shot and also dish one back out and stay on his toes and box with him. Calvin Kattar, unanimous decision, 29-28. Let's go.
I'm not gonna lie, Alex made a pretty damn compelling sales pitch for the underdog there. I'm not gonna lie. It's a great fight, man. This is such a good fight for Nashville. I'm happy that a crowded event got this fight. This is a banger in the 145 division, man. And featherweight, you got the Boston finisher, the seasoned vet, Calvin Kattar, going against the man on a 5-fight knockout spree in Steve the Mean Machine Garcia. I mean, these are 2 featherweights that I am a fan of both, as Mike and Alex are as well, I would imagine. I actually got the opportunity to meet Calvin Kattar. He was a really cool guy. And I actually have some fam up north near New Hampshire and Boston. I think one of my family members' friends actually trains at New England Cartel. So it's really cool to see them doing something up northeast as far as MMA. And you have to definitely think Rob Font and Calvin Kattar are definitely the main guys at the gym for sure. As for Steve Garcia, he trains at a pretty good gym himself. He trains at Jackson Wink, and I would reckon he's one of the more higher profile guys now that John Jones is gone. So they're definitely invested in him and this win streak he's on at 145. This is a great fight. On paper, this is supposed to be just a purely striking fight. But it would not surprise me if Steve Garcia tried to mix things up with a takedown. I'm just putting it out there. I know we do think this fight primarily occurs on the feet, and it probably will ultimately at the end of the day. At least 80% of the fight will be on the feet. But I do think Steve Garcia should at least attempt the idea of mixing in a takedown. Just because I do feel that even in this 4-fight losing streak and at age 37, Calvin Kattar is going through, I still think he is the more technical boxer. He's got the better, crispier, straighter punches. He's got a wicked jab. His footwork is still good, but I must also admit, I do think post-Arnold Allen fight, after that knee injury he sustained in that matchup, his footwork hasn't looked as good as it has. It could also be age as well as a factor, but I think the footwork's still there, but specifically the way he steps into his jab, I don't think he got that same pop that Calvin used to, personally. And in his last fight, Zalal was backing up a lot. He's definitely not going to have to worry about that in this matchup. I think Garcia is polar opposite from a Yusuf Zalal, at least on the feet. This is a guy who's looking for a car crash. This is a guy who wants to get in, get out. At least that's how he's looked in his last 5 fights. And I do think Calvin Kattar is a superior competition he's faced. The likes of Max Holloway, Arnold Allen, and the Zabit Magomedsharipov. It's not close. I do think that Garcia's got the Mezcayil Costa win. I do think was really impressive the way he won that fight. But going back to this matchup, I think Kattar's sharper. I think he does have a cardio advantage, at least style wise. The way that Steve Garcia fights, he's really trying to get out of there by round 1. This is a tough fight, man. Because I do think the longer the fight goes, that's what Calvin wants. He wants this to be a war. Whereas Steve Garcia wants to just get in, get out. This is tough. I do think Steve Garcia should grapple. I do think he should mix that part of his game in this matchup. I think he should kick more in this matchup. I think he should not just fight this fight purely with his hands. That would be malpractice in my opinion. I think he needs to mix it up and keep Calvin guessing. Calvin's 37, Steve Garcia's 33. One's on a 5-fight win streak, the other one's on a 4-fight losing streak. This is so tough. but I'm going to go with the momentum of Steve Garcia right now. And you know what? Against my better judgment, I know he's on a fight knockout streak, and I think he could still get a knockout. But I think he's going to win a fucking tough decision. I think this is going to be a great fight. I think Calvin's going to be popping his jab out early. I think Steve Garcia is going to be looking to land big overhands and big kicks of his own. I really think you should attack the legs of Calvin Kattar in this fight. I really think that would be a big weapon to use against a boxing heavy style. I think Kattar will probably even hit some counters of his own. But I think Garcia is going to mix in wrestling more than people think. I think he's going to want to get ground and pound as an option in this fight. I think it's going to be either a third round TKO or a decision win for Steve Garcia in an absolute war. But I think he would have mixed in the takedowns when he needed to, and he would have shown that he's improved as a fighter where he's not just a guy who's going to get in there and get a knockout. I think he would have earned a hard-fought decision win over a savvy veteran in Calvin Kattar. So I'm calling for a war decision win for Steve Garcia. It is going to be sweaty. It is going to look like Kattar's on the verge of getting knocked out, and it's going to look like Garcia's on the verge of getting knocked out, but they both tough it out, and they make it to the third round. Could even be a split. I think this is just going to be an absolute banger of a fight.
Got a lot of sleepers on the card that could be good.
Yeah.
Landwehr's fight. I'll call it be good.
Facts.
Yeah, I think that's going to be my either Nate the Train versus Shari is going to be fight of the night, or this one. This one's for sure. I think this is the main event, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Up
It's a
there.
great fight, 145. Great fight.
Yeah, but moving on, we got the co-main event of the evening. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson taking on Gabriel Bonfim. I'm gonna go like how Alex went with how Calvin Kattar. Kind of the reason why how Alex is going with Calvin Kattar. I'm gonna go with Wonderboy the same way, but mainly with a twist. I don't think Gabriel Bonfim is that good. Nicholas Dalby did look good in his previous matchups with guys like Renat and stuff, but I think that's just because of cardio and output. I think Wonderboy can do what Dalby did, not certain much in like certain things, but I think Wonderboy's got better cardio. And I've seen Wonderboy go against Shavkat in Buckley. He was doing really good in that fight, those two fights. And I know he got finished in those two and all that, but Bonfim is overrated to me. I don't know. Something's just telling me he's going to gas, and then once he gasses out, he's going to quit. I think Wonderboy is going to TKO him in the third, or it's going to be a 29-28 decision where Bonfim looks exhausted and Wonderboy just styles on him. Yeah, I think there's going to be levels shown in this, and Wonderboy, I think, is going to fight for his career and his job. And I think this is close to where Wonderboy lives at, too. So, I don't really see him losing this fight. Let me see where Wonderboy's from. South Carolina. Yeah, that's, like, not that far from Tennessee. And I think like I said, I don't see him losing to, I don't see him losing to Bonfim.
Yeah, it is another one of the harder matchups to predict in this card because Gabriel Bonfim is a grappler, Wonderboy a striker. I am going to agree with Mike. I'm going to pick Wonderboy. Bonfim can compete on the feet a little bit, and he can mix in the grappling, which is the threat, of course, is grappling here. I don't think anybody's really afraid of him outstriking Wonderboy. It's the grappling. And he does have a pretty good jiu-jitsu game. Wonderboy is been shown to be difficult to take down. The only person I could think of who was easily able to get him down in round one was Ball. Recently, like in the last couple years. Burns in his prime, I think, did it as well. But Shavkat, who came in injured, wasn't able to do it very well. Buckley wasn't able to do it very well. Wonderboy's takedown defense has showed up in his old age still. And that's kind of what's making me pick this fight, along with the cardio disadvantage of Bone Theme. I don't like the way he looked against Dalby. Dalby does make people look that way sometimes, like just based on his style. But I think with Bone Theme coming in, that side kick from Wonderboy is going to be money. He's going to be able to hit it on his midsection over and over and over again, keep him at range, kind of mitigate the takedowns while sapping at his gas tank and kind of hitting the air out of him. I think Wonderboy can control most of the fight early. I think he could win the first round just based on kind of keeping Bone Theme at range. I don't think Bone Theme's takedown game is anything super special. I don't think it's anything Wonderboy's ever seen before, considering he's fought the likes of Woodley, Burns, Bilal, people like that. I think he'll be able to defend enough of the takedowns early for Bone Theme not to get a submission early. And then as it gets later into the fight, Bone Theme gas tank a little bit lower, and Wonderboy has more and more success. I'm going to say a 30-27 or a 29-28 decision for Wonderboy Thompson. I think he's still got it on the feet. I think his takedown defense is still there. And I think Bone Theme is legit on the ground, but I don't think his cardio's like that. And I don't know if his takedown game is like that either. I don't know if he has a good enough takedown game to get down and hold down Wonderboy routinely and eventually find a submission. So I'm going to go Wonderboy by decision, smart outside fighting with the teeps and jabs and blitz strikes. So I'm going to go Wonderboy. I'll go 30-27 every round. Tony.
Okay.
It's a good fight. Co-main event. The way this matchmaking took place, this tells me the UFC wants Bone Theme to work. I couldn't understand as to why you would give him a co-main slot unless you want him to work. Also, I would have given Wonderboy a different matchup other than this, but again, like I said, I feel like the UFC wants a welterweight that's Brazilian, that's well-rounded. I think they wanted Carlos Prates to beat Ian Gary and make a name for himself, but I think they want Bone Theme to be a potential other contender that's Brazilian at 170. I think, controversial take, but I think in their last couple fights, I do understand Wonderboy's facing much better competition overall between Joaquin Buckley and Shavkat Rakhmonov, but I actually feel Nicholas Dalby has looked better at his age in his last couple fights than Wonderboy has in his last couple fights. Controversial as that may be, I think his style worked well against Bone Theme's style because Bone Theme is a guy who really goes for it early in the fight, whether it's in grappling exchanges or whether it's on the feet. And he'll take risks where he may even overextend and may even gas himself out. And that really played into Dalby's type of game where he has durability and cardio and he's able to keep that pace. I do think Wonderboy has a good gas tank as well. But he does slow down because he has a kick-heavy style. I think the grappling is such an immense gap in this fight, man. I really do. I know Shavkat Rakhmonov had trouble taking down Wonderboy in their fight, and he still became the first man to submit Wonderboy. But Shavkat was in the midst of an injury in that fight, as we later found out. I think Bone Theme's got better jiu-jitsu than Shavkat. I could be wrong, but hot take. I think Bone Theme's brand of jiu-jitsu is better than Shavkat's. The question is it better than Burns? And for an MMA setting, it wouldn't look like it on paper, but with the urgency that he has, like it looks like Burns. If he ever to be fair, like in the UFC, I haven't seen too many Burns submissions, but when he does get them, he looks like he's in full control, and he's like it's almost effortless. But with Bone Theme, you could really see the emphasis and the stress and the pressure that he puts on getting these submissions, the constriction in his squeeze, and the Chaos Williams fight. I know Chaos Williams isn't a great grappler, but I want to say that was the first time he ever got submitted in his career. I think the second this fight hits the ground, it's over. Like, I know Bilal wasn't able to get to a real dominant position against Wonderboy, and Burns, especially Burns, he wasn't able to really get a submission or ground and pound TKO. But I just think Bone Theme fights different than Bilal and Burns. I think Bilal and Burns are more smarter with their fight IQ, and they're more cautious in terms of not giving up their gas tank. But I think Bone Theme does not care about that. I think Bone Theme wants finishes, and he really goes for it. And I think they really want him to work. So that all being said, I do think Wonder Boy's the better striker. He's fought better people. He's got the better gas tank, but he's older. His takedown defense isn't as good as I think people think it is, and I think the gap on the ground is so much more immense on the feet. I do think Wonder Boy is clearly better than him on the feet, but I think there's more of a chance Bomb Fiend hurts Wonder Boy on the feet than Wonder Boy stuffs Bomb Fiend's takedowns. That's how I'm looking at this fight. So all that considered, I'm going with a first round submission for Gabriel Bonfim. I think, like I said, the second this hits the mat, I think it's over. I think he's going to pass his guard. He could get an arm triangle. I think he could take his back. I think he could get an arm bar. I think there's a versatility of submissions at his arsenal that he could really get in this fight. And I know Wonder Boy's only been sub one time in his career, but I don't think he would have fought someone with this much intent to get the fight to the ground as like quickly as Bonfim is. I know Woodley wanted to get takedowns. I know Shavkat wanted to get to the ground and engage in the clinch. But Bonfim, you are going to visibly see the emphasis and the stress he puts into trying to get this fight on the ground. So, all that considered, I think it's going to be a first round submission and a very good performance for Gabriel Bonfim.
Word. Alrighty. Moving on. We got the main event of the evening. Taliesin Teixeira taking on Derek the Black Beast Lewis. For some reason, I could see Derek Lewis knocking out Taliesin Teixeira. We haven't seen enough of Taliesin Teixeira to see if he could do what a Cyril Gane could do, or a Daniel Cormier can do, or all these other good names that has beaten Derek Lewis in the past. But I'm willing to take the risk in going with Taliesin Teixeira here. I think he's going to. I think he's a better clincher. He's got better kicking, and I think he's going to use his height and reach drastically against Derek Lewis. I think what's going to happen is I think it's going to be the knees to the body that is going to kill Derek Lewis. I think it's going to be a first round TKO. I think it's going to get to a clinch exchange, and Derek Lewis is going to try to swing for the fences and try to get out of it. But Taliesin gets him in a calm position, just starts kneeing him to the body viciously. And I think Derek Lewis is going to have that viral, like, funny, like, moment where the fat fuck just gets brutally kneed to the body and he goes, "Ooh!" I could definitely see him going, "Ooh!" And then he goes to the ground, and I think he's going to get ground and pound. That's my prediction. But I can't rule out Derek Lewis. He is tough. I could see him knocking out Taliesin Teixeira, but I like Taliesin Teixeira. He could be something in this division. We'll have to see.
Yeah, I've deliberated over this fight for a couple of days. I am going to be picking Taliesin Teixeira by first round KO. Derek Lewis is, 29 times the experience that Taliesin Teixeira has in the UFC. Derek Lewis has 29 fights. Teixeira has 1. I think that being said, the way Teixeira approaches his fights is it isn't timidly, it's calculated, and he's able to do fight at range, whereas a lot of heavyweights seem to struggle with that. Teixeira can throw teeps. I saw against Tafa, his first strike he threw was a teep, which I like. Against Derek Lewis, I'd like to see something similar, or maybe just back up, make sure you don't get overhand or switch kicked or anything like that. Like, have an intelligent start to the first round. And, Derek Lewis has KO'd a lot of young prospects. He's KO'd people lower ranked than him. But a lot of these guys aren't necessarily superior athletes. They're usually fat fucks as well. Teixeira's a tall guy. He's athletic. I like that he starts fights intelligently. He likes to keep range where that's important to him as a tall guy, where he's all the way in or all the way out. He's in the clinch or he's at range kicking or jabbing. I like that. He's powerful. As Mike said, I think like the knees to the body are going to be huge in this fight. In the clinch, I think that's a thing that Derek Lewis has historically struggled with all the time, whether it be the Cyril Gane fight or Volkov fights or other fights in general. That Derek Lewis has had problems with that. I think we'll see that again. I think Teixeira's going to have a little bit more oomph behind it, a little bit of more gravity, a little bit more power. And another thing, the way Teixeira finished Justin Tafa in that fight with the elbow in the clinch is the exact same way Tuivasa finished Derek Lewis in their fight. So I could totally see that exact same finish happening again. Like, Derek, what's his name? Walker has 2 heel hooks in a row. I could see Teixeira getting 2 clinch elbows in a row. So I could see that exact same finish playing out. It's happened to Derek Lewis before, and Teixeira did it in his last fight. So I think the clinch is going to be huge here for Teixeira, no matter which way you cut it, whether it's the elbows or the knees. I think the clinch is where he breaks Derek Lewis. And I think Derek Lewis, he struggles with that, and it's just going to be another case of him struggling with that. I think Teixeira is going to hit to the body right away. He's going to jab Derek Lewis. Derek Lewis is going to be significantly slower, less athletic, older. And once he gets into the clinch, I see the knees softening him up, and he can go for an elbow to the head or a knee to the head and probably finish the fight in round 1. I'm going to go Teixeira. First round TKO, by the end of the round, clinch strikes.
Yeah, gonna make it a clean sweep on this one. I think heavyweight, you have a new contender on your hands. I'm very high on Talison Teixeira. I saw his Contender Series debut, and I know he's very green, and he's 25 years old. But I actually picked a young heavyweight that's Brazilian as well. He's 27 years old, and Walter Walker on this card. And that's exactly what I'm going to do here. I understand he has only 8 fights in his career, and it's not even close. Derek Lewis has clearly fought the better guys. He has clearly more experience, and he is the knockout king. But I see something special in Talison Teixeira, man. 6'7", 83-inch reach. I think he's really good at his range management. The knockout over Tafa, I know people don't think too much of it, but I thought it was clinical. I thought it was super technical for heavyweight standards. The way he set up that takedown, even though he failed the takedown, he pushed him up against the cage, and then he framed into getting a perfectly timed clinch elbow. And it was clean. Do I think he's going to do that to Derek Lewis? Potentially. I think Derek Lewis has his trouble against strikers, the likes of like a Cyril Gane, a JDS. And I think he does his best work, honestly, against wrestlers like Curtis Blades, and he just finds ways to spontaneously get up from these like tough positions where guys are on top of him, and he just gets up, and then he just is the more powerful, dangerous striker in those matchups. In this matchup, I think Talison's more poised, better composure. I think Derek Lewis, even though he's got the experience advantage, I think he fights more wild than Talison does. I think Talison's I only saw him throw it one time in the Tafa fight. It was super early in the fight. His head kick looks really clean for a heavyweight. He's got a nice high roundhouse. I know he only threw it one time and it landed at the guard of Tafa, but to have that dexterity in his legs as a heavyweight, I thought was pretty impressive. You don't see heavyweights throw head kicks like that. That's not conventionally what you would think a heavyweight in the UFC, especially when you see the top 5. The only guy you could think of doing that is Cyril Gane, and we know how good of an athlete he is. For Talison to have that in his arsenal, I think that's very dangerous, especially when he's as tall as he is, and with the 83-inch reach, he really knows how to maximize his range and really get the full, as Alex said, the gravity. I really do agree with him on that. I think Talison, you're going to see a different gravity and a different shift of weight in his strikes. Even his jab is going to look sharper. It's going to look more powerful than Lewis's. I think Lewis's footwork isn't going to look as poised and as clean as Teixeira's is. I could see a multitude of ways he gets this knockout. I could see it being off the counter. I could see it being a 1-2 down the pipe where he's going forward. I could see it up against the cage with clinch work to the body or to the head. I could see even a head kick, really. I think there's a multitude of ways Talison gets this knockout, but I think we're all in agreement it happens in the first round. I'm going to go to first round, Talison Teixeira knockout in Nashville. I think for the UFC to make his second fight in their promotion, a main event, in a crowded event, they clearly want this guy to work. And I'm not saying this guy's the guy to beat Aspinall, but he's a guy that it interests me, that fight. He's big, man. He's 6'7", 25 years old, 83-inch reach, got power, good range management. We haven't seen his ground game really tested yet. That's an area I want to see. But in this fight, this fight's primarily going to take place on the feet between him and the Knockout King. And I think Talison's going to look clinical yet again. I think we're going to see a contender rise before our very eyes, as young as he is. I think he's, dare I say, the next big thing at heavyweight.
Right. That's the predictions. All right. Thank you
Alrighty.
for joining us on this prediction roller coaster. We will see you next time.
Make sure to go like and subscribe. We appreciate you guys for watching. And, yeah, let's go UFC
Take care.
Nashville.